Welcome to the debate. Today we are stepping onto what might feel like holy ground or perhaps a battlefield of interpretation. We are opening a file that most people consider firmly closed, the biography of the devil. We're looking at one of the most famous passages in the Old Testament, Isaiah 14, and we are going to place it alongside a specific politically charged moment in the Gospels involving a Roman coin.
And when you say famous, you really mean controversial. We are talking about the passage that gave the Western world the name Lucifer. This is the story of the shining one, the star of the morning, crashing down from heaven. It's the origin story of evil for millions of people.
Exactly. For centuries, this text has been read as the biography of a cosmic rebel, the exact moment Satan fell from grace, before human history even began. But our source material today challenges us to look at the grammar, the history, and the theology of descent, to ask a very different and I think maybe more uncomfortable question. Is this really a story about a war in heaven? Or is it a story about a human king committing a tragic category error?
It's a massive pivot. Essentially, the question on the table is Isaiah 14 a description of a spiritual rebellion met with a sneering, mocking God? Or is it, as you're going to argue, a strict grammatical exposure of a human being who simply doesn't understand what divinity actually is?
That is the core question. I'm taking the position of the advocate for the text as it stands, grammatically. I'm arguing that Isaiah 14 describes a human king of Babylon, not a supernatural demon. And I'm going to argue that when God asks, "How were you brought low?" it isn't mockery. It's a grief-filled pedagogical question. And ultimately, I believe the text argues that true divinity is defined not by how high you can go, but by the ability to descend and return, something the king of Babylon could not do.
And I'm going to take the role of the dissenter. I represent the traditional reading, but also, the skeptical voice regarding this whole rereading. I want to know if removing the cosmic villain reduces the stakes of the Bible. I want to challenge this idea that God doesn't mock evil because, frankly, evil seems to deserve mockery. And I want to rigorously test this claim that descent is the primary test of divinity, because in the real world, falling down just looks like failure.
Okay, so let's begin with the foundational theological constraint our source material presents. God is love. Now, before you roll your eyes at the sentimentality or think I'm quoting a greeting card,
I was about to say, that sounds nice, but we are talking about judgment here. We're talking about justice. God is love is great for a wedding, but does it really work for a cosmic courtroom?
well, the material argues this isn't sentimental. It's structural. It's ontological. If God is love, he cannot sneer. Mockery requires a desire to diminish another being for the sake of your own pleasure or dominance. It implies a lack within the mocker, a need to push someone else down to feel higher. That is mutually exclusive with the nature of a God who is, self-sufficient love. Therefore, the opening of Isaiah 14, where the text asks, "How are you fallen from heaven?" it just cannot be read as derision.
I see why you think that, but I have to push back immediately. The text explicitly says, "You shall take up this proverb against the king." The tone feels like a taunt. If a being stands up and says, "I will be like the Most High," isn't the appropriate response from the Almighty a little bit of cosmic laughter? Who do you think you are moment?
That is the human reaction, certainly. We want the smack down. We want the verbal dunk. But the argument here is that the Hebrew interrogative, Ike, how, is the same word used in Laments. It is the opening word of the book of Lamentations. How lonely sits the city. It's the tone God uses when confronting loss or impossible contradictions. It's not, look at you. It is a grief-filled interrogation. The text is exposing a tragic incoherence. A human is trying to occupy a station, divinity, that creates a logical impossibility.
Okay, tragic incoherence is a fascinating phrase, but let's look at that station he's trying to occupy. The king says, "I will sit on the mount of assembly. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds." This is cosmic language. The dissenter in me looks at this and says, mere humans don't talk like that. This sounds like a spiritual entity who knows the geography of heaven. If you strip the Lucifer figure out of this, don't you lose the gravity of the rebellion?
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it ignores the grammar. The text explicitly addresses the king of Babylon. The pronouns never change. There is no switch where Isaiah stops talking to the man and starts talking to a demon behind him. The tragedy and the gravity comes from the fact that a human being is so deluded by power that he attempts ontological impersonation. He isn't just claiming to be a strong ruler, he is claiming to be the Most High.
But that's my point. If he claims to be the Most High, surely the judgment must be more than just a grief-filled question. It feels like you're defanging the judgment of God. If I claim to be the president, the Secret Service doesn't look at me with sadness, they tackle me.
Or perhaps we are redefining judgment. The source material argues that God's judgment is revelatory. God allows the lie to speak. He lets the king say, "I will ascend, I will be like God." He permits the claim to stretch out until it just snaps under the weight of reality. The judgment isn't a lightning bolt, it's the exposure of the fact that the king cannot sustain the claim.
So God acts as a teacher rather than an executioner?
He acts as the truth, and the truth is, the king is mortal. The lie, "I am God," is judged by the reality, "You are dying."
I want to dig into that exposure idea in a moment, but we have to address the elephant in the room, the name. Morning Star. The text calls him Hillel ben Shachar. For most people listening, that is the name Lucifer. It's in the King James Bible. You're telling me that's just, what, a translation error?
Not an error, but a misunderstanding of role versus identity. The source material is very clear on this. Shining One, Son of the Dawn, is a role marker. It's a slot. In the ancient world, it referred to the planet Venus, the star that rises brightest but is immediately swallowed by the sun. It describes the highest luminary position in the hierarchy.
So it's a job title, not a proper name.
Exactly. The tragedy of Isaiah 14 isn't that a monster named Lucifer fell, it's that a human king tried to fill a slot that belongs to the Messiah.
The Messiah? Now you're connecting this to the New Testament.
The bright and morning star. The slot exists. It is a legitimate position. It belongs to God. The king of Babylon tries to steal the title, and the how is the exposure of that theft.
That's a compelling argument because it sets up a rival Christ rather than just a random monster. But have you considered the implications of falling? The text says, "How are you fallen from heaven?" Not Paul. If this is just a human king, he was never in heaven to begin with. So isn't the grammatical reading forcing a metaphor where the text implies literal geography?
That brings us to the absolute core of the debate regarding the grammar of descent. And this is where the distinction between going and being brought becomes the most critical piece of evidence.
Break that down for me. Going versus being brought. Because to me, down is down. Gravity works the same way for everyone.
Not in the grammar of divinity. The dissenter argues that descent is proof of failure, but the advocate and the source material argues that descent is actually the prerogative of divinity. God descends. He comes down to Sinai. He comes down in the incarnation. The issue isn't the direction of the movement, it's the agency.
So you're saying the king didn't choose to fall?
Exactly. Look at the verbs. The king is brought down, he is cut down, he is thrust down. These are passive verbs. He is compelled by gravity and reality. He is the victim of his own mortality. Now contrast that with Christ. Christ empties himself. Christ lays down his life. Christ descends.
So God goes down, the king is pushed down.
Precisely. The source material frames this brilliantly. True divinity is not proven by staying high, which is what the human king thought. He thought, if I go up, I prove I'm God. That's the human logic. But God proves he is God by having the sovereign capacity to descend into death and return without loss.
I see the symmetry there. It completely inverts the human value system. I mean, we spend our whole lives trying to climb ladders to prove we matter. You're saying God is the only one who can walk down the ladder without ceasing to be God.
Yes, descent destroys the creature. Descent reveals the creator.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that entirely yet. I mean, I see the poetic beauty of it, but let's talk about where he lands. He lands in Sheol. The text says, "You are brought down to Sheol, to the sides of the pit." Now, traditionally, this is hell. This is the place of punishment, fire, and brimstone. If you turn this into a story about sovereign descent, are you also saying Sheol isn't a place of torment?
That is a massive part of this rereading. The advocate argues that Sheol in this text is not a metaphysical torture chamber, it is the death domain. It's the great equalizer. The text describes the other dead kings rising up from their thrones in Sheol to greet him.
Right, to mock him. You have become weak like us.
But notice what they are witnessing to. They aren't torturing him. They are witnessing to the limit of his nature. They're saying, you claimed to be the Most High, but you are here in the dust, just like us. The punishment is the inability to rise.
So you're saying the hell aspect isn't active torture by demons, but the sheer humiliation of being dead when you claimed you were eternal.
Yes, it is the ultimate reality check, and the source material points out something uncomfortable for the traditional view. God enters Sheol, Psalm 139. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there.
That's a difficult verse for the hell is separation from God crowd.
Exactly. If Sheol is a place where God exists, it cannot be a place of pure separation or uncontrolled evil. It is a domain under authority.
That actually makes the descent argument stronger, I'll admit. If God can go to Sheol and come back, but the king goes to Sheol and stays, then the staying is the proof he isn't God.
Exactly. The king's descent is terminal. God's descent is redemptive. The question, how are you brought low, is really asking, by what authority did this movement occur? Since the king had no authority to move himself, he was exposed as a counterfeit.
It's a rigorous framework, I'll give you that. It demands we pay attention to verbs more than vibes. But let's shift gears to the coin. You mentioned in the intro that the render unto Caesar story parallels this. I assume you're referring to the famous trap. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar?
Yes, and most people read that as a political dodge, a clever way to avoid getting arrested by the Romans or stoned by the Jews. But the source material argues this is another instance of category collision, just like Isaiah 14.
Explain the connection. Because on one hand, we have a king claiming to be God in Babylon. On the other, we have a tax dispute in Jerusalem.
Think about the setup. The Pharisees and Herodians ask a juridical civil question. Can we pay tax to Caesar? They are treating Caesar as a human ruler with a political office, so Jesus asks for the coin. Now, historically, what was on that coin?
It would have been a denarius, likely Tiberius, and it would have an inscription.
Right, Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus, and often Pontifex Maximus, high priest.
Right, it claims divinity. It's a piece of political propaganda in silver.
So look at the trap Jesus springs, or rather, the trap the coin springs. The moment the coin appears, it introduces a God claim into a tax dispute. If the coin is truly divine, as it says it is, then it belongs to the category of God. But you don't pay taxes to God, you give God worship.
Okay, I'm with you.
But if Caesar is just a man, as the tax question assumes, that he cannot legitimately own a coin that claims he is God, a man cannot own a divine object in that way.
So it's a catch-22?
It's a category error, just like the king of Babylon. The king of Babylon was a man trying to use Most High language. The coin is a piece of metal trying to carry divine language.
I come at it from a different way. I've always read render unto Caesar as a separation of church and state. Give the government their money, give God your heart.
That's the safe reading. That's the reading that keeps everyone comfortable. But the source material says that's impossible. Because once the coin is stamped with a divine inscription, it cannot be rendered to Caesar as man, because men don't own divine things. And it can't be rendered to Caesar as God, because taxes aren't for gods. The coin bypasses both categories. It's an abomination.
So when Jesus says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, he's not validating the tax.
He's issuing a conditional ruling that acts as an exposure. Give him what is his. But if the coin claims to be divine, and he isn't divine, what actually belongs to him?
Nothing. Or at least not the coin in the way he thinks he owns it.
Exactly. It exposes the lie without Jesus having to shout. The artifact itself screams the contradiction, just like the king of Babylon's corpse in Sheol screams the contradiction of his claim to be God.
There is a fascinating thread here about exposure versus punishment. In both cases, Isaiah and the coin, you are arguing that God or Jesus doesn't need to use force. He just uses the weight of the lie to crush the liar.
That's it. That is the definition of the pedagogy of the lie.
God allows the falsehood to stretch out, "I will ascend," or "I am divine Caesar," until the reality of death or the reality of logic snaps it.
But I have to play the skeptic one more time here. The source material mentions the feelings objection, and I think that's where I live.
Tell me about that.
It says that we cling to the Lucifer narrative because it feels dramatically satisfying. It has a villain, it has a war, it has stakes. If we reduce Isaiah 14 to a human king making a grammar mistake, and we reduce the coin to a logic puzzle about inscriptions, doesn't the Bible become a bit dry, a bit academic?
I see why you feel that way. We love a good Marvel movie. We love a cosmic bad guy. It makes the world feel structured. Good guys here, bad guys there. But I would frame it differently. I think the human reading is actually more terrifying.
How so?
Because if Isaiah 14 is about a monster named Satan, I can distance myself from it. I'm not a cosmic angel. I'm not a demon. I've never been to the Mount of Assembly. But if Isaiah 14 is about a human being who falls in love with their own ascent, who begins to believe their own press, who thinks they can secure their own existence by climbing higher, well, that's me. That's us.
That's the tragic incoherence.
Yes. The text becomes a mirror, not a window into a Star War. It asks us, are we trying to prove our value by how high we can climb? Because the source material concludes with this haunting thought. Men think divinity is proven by staying high. Scripture proves divinity by descending without loss and returning with life.
That brings us back to the agency argument. Going down versus being brought down.
Correct. The king of Babylon is brought down to Sheol and stays there. He is exposed. Christ goes down to Sheol, holds the keys, and walks out. That is the difference between a pretender and the Most High.
I have to admit, the keys of death and Hades points in the source material was strong. If Christ has the keys, then Sheol isn't an autonomous torture chamber run by the devil. It's a governed territory.
Exactly. And if it's governed, then the king of Babylon isn't being tortured by a rival power. He is being held by the truth that he is human.
It's a bit chilling, honestly. It suggests that the worst punishment isn't fire, but the absolute inability to move, being stuck.
Being stuck in your own mortality when you claimed you were infinite. That is a hell of its own making.
So where does this leave us? If we accept this reading, we lose our favorite origin story for Satan.
We lose a story we invented to make ourselves feel comfortable, yes, but we gain a rigorous definition of what separates God from humanity. It stops us from asking, where do beings go when they die? And starts us asking, by what authority do beings move?
By what authority do beings move? That's the line from the text that stuck with me.
It changes everything. If you move by your own authority, like Christ laying down his life, that is divine. If you are moved by gravity, by death, by compulsion, like the king, you are a creature.
It's a humbling distinction. It means that every time we try to ascend to secure ourselves, we are actually proving we aren't God, because God doesn't need to ascend to be secure.
Precisely. And that is why the how of Isaiah 14 is grief, not mockery. God looks at a human striving to be God and says, "Why are you doing this? You will only break against the reality of who I am."
Well, I still miss the drama of the war in heaven. I can't lie. There is something visceral about the Lucifer mythos. But I will concede this. The grammatical argument regarding agency, the difference between the active descent of God and the passive collapse of the king, offers a precision that the traditional story lacks. It solves the problem of why falling is bad for Satan but good for Jesus.
It resolves the contradiction. And it challenges us to abandon the comfort of the inherited story for the hard truth of the text.
The hard truth being that we are dust, and only one has the authority to turn dust into life.
That is the debate. Is it a story of cosmic war or a story of human limit? Is God sneering or is he grieving our ambition?
We hope this discussion has illuminated the text in a new way for you.
It certainly made me look at my loose change differently.
Indeed. Thank you for joining the debate. We'll leave the verdict to you.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I have to be honest with you. Today's stack of research has just, it's completely scrambled my brain.
That's a strong start.
Well, it's true. Usually we take a topic, we unpack it, learn something new, and, we move on.
Yeah.
But today feels different. Today feels like we are walking up to a load-bearing wall in the house of Western culture and just taking a sledgehammer to it.
That is a very apt metaphor. Yeah. We are definitely dealing with some foundational structural narratives today.
We're talking about the ultimate story. The one that is baked into everything, our movies, our books, our video games, and definitely our religious imagination. We are talking about the villain, the cosmic rebel.
The story of Lucifer falling from heaven.
The story of Lucifer falling from heaven. You know the one I mean.
Oh, yeah. The most beautiful angel, the pride, the rebellion, the war in heaven. It's an epic.
It's an epic. It's iconic. It's Milton's Paradise Lost in our collective consciousness. It's the backstory that gives us a clear bad guy. It explains why the world is so messed up, because there was this cosmic treason before humanity even showed up on the scene. It's dramatic, it's satisfying, and here's the pivot. And honestly, it's kind of a terrifying pivot for me personally.
Okay.
The source material we are diving into today, a theological analysis titled The Sovereignty of Dissent and the Exposure of Falsehood, makes a claim that just stops you in your tracks.
It argues that the story you just told, the specific narrative of a supernatural archangel named Lucifer leading a rebellion in heaven, is not in the text of Isaiah 14.
Okay, just to be crystal clear for everyone listening right now, we aren't saying the source claims evil doesn't exist. We're not saying that.
Not at all. And we're not saying the source claims there aren't spiritual forces or adversaries in the Bible. Correct. This is not a denial of evil. It is a correction of biography. The source is arguing that Isaiah 14, the chapter almost globally cited as the origin story of Satan, is actually a biography of someone else entirely. And honestly, the reality of who it is talking about is much, much more uncomfortable than a story about a demon.
Right, because if it's a demon, it's out there. It's this external monster. But the source argues this text is about a human, specifically a human king.
Oh, my man.
But this creates a massive problem, right? Which is really the mission of this deep dive. If this text is just about some political ruler in ancient Babylon, why does it use language like falling from heaven? Why does it talk about stars and clouds and the Mount of Assembly? That doesn't sound like politics.
And that is the core question. That's what we have to wrestle with. If we strip away the supernatural filter we've placed over this text for centuries, we're left with this profound mystery about the nature of power. Why do humans try to be gods? And what happens when reality finally catches up with them?
And in a twist I really did not see coming, the source argues that the key to unlocking this ancient Babylonian poem is actually found in a Roman coin from the time of Jesus.
It's all connected. The king of Babylon and Caesar. They're playing the exact same game. And the way they are both exposed teaches us something absolutely fundamental about what it actually means to be divine.
So we have a lot to get through. A lot. We need to look at grammar, we need to look at ancient astronomy, and we need to look at the psychology of power itself. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the Hebrew text, I want to pause on something the author brings up right at the very start. Because I felt it. I felt it hard. The feelings objection.
Yes, this is crucial. The source anticipates this. It knows that as soon as you say Isaiah 14 isn't about the devil, the reader, or in this case you, the listener, is going to recoil.
I recoiled. I'm reading this, and my first thought wasn't, oh, that's an interesting grammatical point. My first thought was, no, stop it. I like my story.
Why do you think that is? Why is that reaction so visceral for us?
Because the Lucifer story works. It's a great narrative arc. It just makes sense. You have the highest of the high, the tragic flaw of pride, this dramatic fall. It explains the origin of evil in a way that feels complete. It feels tidy. It gives me a specific face to blame for the chaos in the world.
A scapegoat.
Total scapegoat. If you take that away, I feel like I'm losing a foundational piece of the puzzle. It feels like a theft.
That is exactly what the source identifies. We have a deep emotional attachment to the cosmic villain narrative because it is so dramatically satisfying. It creates a clean binary. Us versus him, good versus evil. It externalizes the problem.
Exactly. If the problem is a fallen angel, then the problem isn't me.
Precisely. And this is where the expert, the author of our source material, drops a very, very heavy anchor. The phrase used is, feelings are not exegesis.
Feelings are not exegesis. Oof, that's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. It means that completeness of feeling is not the same thing as accuracy of reading. Just because a story feels satisfying, just because it scratches that itch for a grand mythology, that doesn't mean it's what the prophet Isaiah actually wrote down in the 8th century BC.
So the source is challenging us.
It's challenging us to do something very difficult, to sacrifice a story we love, one that comforts us in a strange way, for a truth that might be starker, and frankly, a lot closer to home.
But wait, play devil's advocate with me here, pun intended. Is it really just feelings? Isn't there a theological risk? If we say Isaiah 14 isn't about Satan, aren't we like weakening the Bible's explanation for evil? Don't we need this text to support the theology?
That's the fear, yes. That's the immediate pushback. But the source argues the exact opposite. It argues that by forcing Isaiah 14 to be about a supernatural devil, we actually miss a much more urgent and immediate warning. We miss the diagnosis of human evil. The Bible has plenty to say about spiritual evil elsewhere. Plenty. But if we turn this specific chapter into a cartoon about a monster with horns, we miss the mirror it's holding up to human kings, human CEOs, human presidents, and, yeah, human egos.
So the argument is that we're using the Lucifer myth to let ourselves off the hook.
In a way, yes. We're mystifying a very human problem. The source basically says, if you want to disagree, you are welcome to. But you cannot disagree because you're sad about losing your favorite story. You have to disagree based on grammar. You have to disagree based on syntax. You have to prove the Lucifer reading is in the Hebrew, not just in your imagination.
Okay. Challenge accepted. Let's do the work. Let's get into the grammar and the identity of the figure in this chapter.
Yeah.
Because looking at the text, there's some things that seem pretty supernatural to me.
Let's do it. So let's start with the basics. The most fundamental rule of reading anything. Rule number 1.
Identify the subject.
Identify the subject. Who is being spoken to?
Okay, looking at the source's breakdown of verse 4, it says, as explicit as day, you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon.
The king of Babylon, not the prince of demons, not the serpent of old, not the spirit behind the king. The text addresses a human political entity.
And if you follow the pronouns through the chapter, which the source does, like meticulously, they never switch.
Never. It is you, all the way through.
So there's no scene break. There's no moment where the camera pans up from the human king to some spiritual being in the sky.
That is a modern invention. It's a lens we've been taught to use. We read that into the text because we have been taught to look for it. But the text itself, on its own terms, treats the subject as a singular, coherent entity, a man who rules an empire.
Okay, but here is where I get stuck, and I think this is where everyone gets stuck. This man says things that no human would say, or at least no sane human. Verse 13, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly.
Yes, the famous I wills.
The 5 I wills. Okay. He says, I will be like the Most High. Now, come on. No human king, no matter how arrogant, literally thinks he can, what, build a rocket ship, fly into the stratosphere, and become Yahweh. That sounds like spiritual language, not political language. Doesn't that prove it's a demon?
This is the absolute crux of the argument, and this is why the source introduces a specific term for this. It calls it ontological impersonation.
Ontological impersonation. Okay, that is a $10 phrase. We need to break that down.
Let's do it. Ontology is the philosophical study of being, of existence, what you are. A rock has a different ontology than a dog. A dog has a different ontology than a human.
And a human has a fundamentally different ontology than God.
Exactly. Different categories of existence. What the king of Babylon is doing here is not just political bragging. He isn't just saying, I'm the strongest king in the Middle East. He is claiming to cross the ontological boundary.
To jump categories.
He's claiming that his power is so absolute, so unchecked, that he has graduated from the category of creature to the category of creator. He's trying to change his very nature.
So he's not saying, I'm a very important human. He's saying, I am no longer human.
That's it. And we have to remember the historical context here. This isn't happening in a vacuum. In the ancient Near East, kings frequently claimed divine status. Egyptian pharaohs were gods. Roman emperors were called son of God. They were seen as the bridge between heaven and earth.
So this wasn't as crazy sounding back then as it is to us now?
It was still an insane claim, but it was a claim that was in the air. So when this king says, I will sit on the Mount of Assembly, he is trying to occupy a specific slot in the cosmos. In Canaanite mythology, the Mount of Assembly was the place where the gods met. He's saying, I'm crashing the board meeting of the universe and taking the CEO's chair. It's like, I'm trying to think of a modern analogy. It's like someone walking into the cockpit of a 747 and putting on the pilot's hat. They might look like the pilot, they might sit in the chair, but they do not know how to fly the plane. They are impersonating the role.
That is a perfect analogy. It is an impersonation of role, of function, of being. And that brings us to the most famous misunderstanding of all, the name.
Lucifer.
Lucifer. Now, this is so important to get right. In the Latin Vulgate, the translation of the Bible that was standard in the West for over 1,000 years, the word used here is Lucifer. But Lucifer is not a proper name. It's not like Steve or Sarah.
So what is it?
In Latin, it just means light bringer or morning star. It's a description of the planet Venus.
Okay, so it's a description.
It's a description. But we need to go back even further to the Hebrew. The original text says, Hillel ben Sahar.
Hillel ben Sahar. Okay, what does that translate to?
Shining one, son of the dawn, or day star, son of the dawn. This is a clear astronomical reference. It is referring to the planet Venus.
The morning star, which we can all see. We can. Now think about the behavior of Venus. It rises in the morning, right before the sun. It is incredibly bright. For a moment, it looks like it's going to dominate the sky. It climbs high. But what happens, inevitably, every single day, when the actual sun comes up?
The sun is so much brighter that Venus just disappears. It gets completely wiped out.
It gets swallowed. The light of the sun obliterates the light of the star. The descent of the morning star is inevitable because it tries to outshine the sun. The source argues that this title, Hillel ben Sahar, is not the proper name of a demon. It is a satirical title for the king.
Oh, wait. That completely flips it. So calling him Morning Star isn't a compliment to his former beauty or whatever. It's a joke about his inevitable doom.
It is a devastating critique. It's high-level political satire. Isaiah is saying, oh, look at you, king of Babylon. You are shining so bright. You think you are the big light in the sky, but you are just Venus, and the real sun is coming up. You are climbing high only to be obliterated by the true light.
That is savage. It's not a myth about a war in heaven. It's a roast. It's a political cartoon written in poetry.
It is a role marker. The king tried to occupy the morning star slot, the highest luminary he could imagine. He tried to wear the jersey of God. And the text is mocking that attempt. It's saying, you are wearing a jersey that doesn't fit you for a team you don't play for, and you're about to get tackled by reality.
This connects to something else the source mentioned, something that really clicks this into place for me. Later in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, doesn't Jesus call himself the morning star?
He does in the very last chapter. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star.
So there is a real morning star.
There is only one being who can actually hold that position, who can actually bear that title without it being a lie, who can actually stand in the full presence of God's light and not be destroyed by it. The tragedy of Isaiah 14 is a human trying to steal a title that belongs to the Messiah.
He's a counterfeit,
Yeah.
an imposter.
He is. The king tries to fill a divine role, and because he is just a man made of dust, the pressure of that role crushes him.
It crushes him. And that leads us to the reaction, the judgment. Because if you read the text right after the king makes these huge, arrogant claims, I will ascend, I will be like the Most High, the very next thing that happens is this question. How are you fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn?
How are you fallen? The Hebrew word is ache. It's a particle of exclamation and interrogation.
Now, I'll be honest. When I read that, I hear a specific tone in my head.
Yeah.
A very specific one. I hear sarcasm. I hear God or the prophets standing over this broken king and saying, ha, how are you fallen? Look at you. You thought you were so tough, and now look at you. It feels like a sneer, a victory lap.
That is absolutely how most of us read it. It's the default interpretation. We project our own feelings of vengeance onto God. We like seeing the bad guy get humiliated. It feels just.
But the source argues that this reading, it says it's theologically impossible.
Impossible. That's a strong word, but the logic is sound. Why is it impossible?
I want to hear you explain this.
It's because of the nature of God. The source takes the statement, God is love, from the New Testament, and applies it as a rigorous constraint on interpretation. It argues that mockery, sneering, belittling for pleasure is a behavior rooted in insecurity.
Explain that. Why is mockery insecure?
Think about it. When I mock you, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to lower your status to make myself feel higher in comparison. I am deriving pleasure from your diminution. I need you to be small so I can feel big. Does the creator of the universe need to do that?
No. He's already the creator. He has
Uh-huh.
nothing to prove. There's no one to compare himself to.
Exactly. God has no insecurity. Therefore, he has no need for mockery. His judgment is real. Yes, he destroys falsehood. Absolutely. But he does not sneer. It's beneath his character.
Hmm.
So the source argues that the tone of "how are you fallen" is not sarcasm, it is grief.
Grief. That's a completely different emotional register.
It's a grief-filled interrogation. It's the same tone God uses in Genesis 3 after the fall. Adam, where are you? God isn't asking because he misplaced Adam. He's not playing hide and seek. He is asking to force Adam to confront his own lostness. It's a question for the listener's benefit.
So in Isaiah 14, it's more like a parent looking at a child who just did something incredibly stupid and dangerous and got hurt. How did this happen? Look at the wreckage you've made of yourself.
Yes. It exposes the tragic incoherence of the situation. A being made of dust, tried to become the infinite God. That is a tragedy. It's an absurdity. The question how invites the entire universe to look at this absurdity and learn from it. It's pedagogical. It's a teaching moment.
The source had this line I absolutely loved. It said, God doesn't crush falsehood with brute force. He lets it speak until it collapses under reality.
That is a profound insight into how judgment works throughout the Bible. We tend to think judgment is God throwing lightning bolts. But so often, judgment is God simply withdrawing his sustaining hand and letting our own lies consume us.
Letting things follow their natural course.
He lets the king of Babylon say, I am God. He lets him build the statue. He lets him amass the army. He lets the lie expand to its absolute logical limit. And then reality asserts itself, gravity kicks in, the human king dies, as all humans do, and the collapse is total. The how question is the caption on the tombstone. It asks the viewer, do you see now why this didn't work? Do you understand the physics of the universe?
It's not about God feeling superior. It's about the truth becoming undeniable.
Precisely. And this leads us directly to the mechanism of that collapse. We've talked about the king claiming to go up and ending up down, but the source spends a huge amount of time on what it calls the physics of descent.
Okay, this was the part that broke my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we have a very simple directional bias in our heads. Up is good, down is bad. Success is up, failure is down. Heaven is up, hell is down. God is up, Satan is down. It's everywhere.
It is deeply ingrained in our language. Moving on up, climbing the corporate ladder, feeling down, hitting rock bottom, top of the heap.
But the source just says, not so fast. Descent, the act of going down, isn't intrinsically evil. In fact, some of the holiest, most creative things in the universe involve going down.
Let's list them. Creation. How does God create humanity? He bows down to the dust to breathe life into it.
Yep.
That is a descent of the highest order. Rain. It falls from heaven to water the earth, bringing life. That is a descent.
The incarnation.
The ultimate descent. The central point of the Christian story. God becomes a fetus. God becomes a baby. God washes feet. God goes to a cross. It's a story of constant voluntary descent.
Okay, so if God is constantly going down, why is the king's descent in Isaiah 14 judged as a bad thing? Why is his falling a punishment?
This is maybe the most philosophical and important point in the whole deep dive, and we really need to sit with it. The source argues the difference isn't the direction, it's the agency.
Agency, meaning who is in control, who is choosing.
Look at the verbs. When God descends in creation, in Jesus, it is active voice. I came down from heaven. He humbled himself. It is voluntary. It is sovereign. God has the power to descend because he knows who he is. He isn't afraid of the bottom because the bottom can't change him.
Note the king.
Look at Isaiah 14 again, verse 15. You are brought down to Sheol. Verse 12, you are cut down to the ground. Verse 19, you are cast out from your tomb.
The all passive voice.
All passive voice. The king isn't jumping, he is being pushed. And this creates what the source calls the test of divinity.
The test of divinity, how does that work?
The king claimed to be like the Most High. Okay, fine. Reality says prove it.
And how do you prove you are the Most High?
By surviving the descent. See, this is the core argument. True divinity is not defined by staying high and safe. True divinity is defined by the ability to go all the way down into darkness, into failure, into death, into the grave, and come back out with life. Only God can descend without ceasing to be God. Only God can enter the danger zone of non-existence and return.
So the ultimate test is, can you go to hell and back?
Basically, yes. In a metaphorical sense, absolutely. God says to the king, you want to be in my category. Fine, take the ride. And the king takes the ride. He hits the grave. And what happens?
He rots. His body decays. He stays there.
He stays there. His descent is terminal. That is the proof that he was an imposter. He couldn't handle the physics of divinity. He wasn't built for the pressure.
Wow. That completely changes the how are you fallen question.
Mm-hmm.
It's really asking, did you jump or were you pushed?
Yeah.
God jumps. The king was pushed.
And because he was pushed, he is trapped. And this leads us to the location of the trap, Sheol.
Okay, Sheol. Again, my pop culture brain kicks in.
Rah!
I hear Sheol, I think hell, I think fire, demons with pitchforks, eternal conscious torment. But the source is very, very specific that we need to correct our geography here.
We absolutely do. We have to stop reading Dante's Inferno or Milton's Paradise Lost back into the Old Testament. The Hebrew word Sheol does not mean hell in the later Christian sense of a place of fiery punishment for the wicked.
So what does it mean then?
It means the grave, the pit, the realm of the dead. It is the domain of death. It's the place where everyone goes when they die. In the Old Testament worldview, the good patriarch Jacob expects to go to Sheol to mourn his son. The psalmist David talks about Sheol. The wicked go and the righteous go. It is the great equalizer.
So it's not a torture chamber.
Not in this text. It's more like a shadowy waiting room. It's the dust from which we came. But the source argues that in Isaiah 14, Sheol serves a specific and brilliant literary function. It acts as a witness.
A witness to the king's fraud.
Exactly. The text has this incredibly chilling, dramatic scene. The king of Babylon finally dies. He has spent his whole life building statues, commanding armies, telling everyone he is a god, and then his heart stops. He goes into the dark, and he arrives in Sheol. And who is there waiting for him?
The text says the shades of the dead. It says all the leaders of the earth are stirred up, the other kings of the nations.
All the other kings who died before him. They are lying on their beds, which the text graphically described as being covered in maggots and worms. It's grim, and they see this new guy arrive, the great king of Babylon, the morning star, the man who made the earth tremble.
And they don't torture him. They don't attack him.
No, they just speak to him. They ask him a question.
They say, you too have become as weak as we. You have become like us.
Can you just imagine the humiliation of that moment? It's not physical pain, it's ontological embarrassment.
Right.
They are the chorus of reality. They're saying, wait a minute, I thought you were like the Most High. I thought you were going to sit on the Mount of Assembly, but here you are, covered in worms, just like us.
It's the ultimate reality check. The grave strips away the lie. You can fake being a god on a golden throne, but you can't fake being a god in a coffin.
You cannot. Sheol is the place where the impersonation falls apart, the costume comes off. And this brings us right back to that crucial contrast with the true God, because the source reminds us, God also goes to Sheol.
If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there.
Yeah.
That's from the Psalms.
Exactly. And in the New Testament, Jesus descends to the lower parts of the earth. He enters the strong man's house, the domain of death, but the difference is absolute. The king of Babylon enters Sheol and becomes a prisoner. He is weak like us. When Jesus enters Sheol, what does he have?
The keys.
I have the keys of death and Hades.
Let's pause on the keys for a second, because that's a powerful metaphor we hear a lot, but I want to make sure we nail it down. What do the keys represent?
They represent authority and access. If you are in a prison cell and you don't have keys, you are an inmate. If you are in that same cell and you do have keys, you are the warden, or you are the liberator. The keys signify that the one holding them is not subject to the rules of the place. Keys turn a prison into a passageway.
So Jesus goes to the same place, the domain of death, but because he is truly divine, because he passed the test of descent, he can walk in, unlock the doors, and walk out.
And take others with him. That is the fundamental difference between the counterfeit morning star and the true morning star. The counterfeit gets stuck in the gravity well of death. The true star shines even in the darkness and rises again, bringing the dawn with him.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's so much more consistent than the War in Heaven story. It makes the whole Bible fit together thematically. It's not about a magical battle in the clouds. It's about the very real battle between the power of life and the power of death.
It creates a consistent theology of power from Genesis to Revelation. It's all one story.
Speaking of consistency, we have to make a jump now. A big jump. We've been deep in ancient Babylon, 700 BC. But the source material takes this left turn that, honestly, I did not see coming. It jumps forward 600 years to the Roman Empire, to a story we all know, the story of the coin.
Render to Caesar.
Now, I'll be honest, when I first saw this in the outline, I thought, okay, that's an interesting detour. Maybe the author just likes this story. But the source insists this is not a detour. It's the same story. It calls it a parallel of category collapse.
It's the climax of the argument. It's the proof of concept in another context. If you understand Isaiah 14, you understand the coin. And if you understand the coin, you understand Isaiah 14.
Okay, so set the scene for us. Refresh our memory.
It's the last week of Jesus' life. Tensions are at their absolute peak. The religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Herodians, who are normally bitter enemies, have teamed up. They're trying to kill him.
But they can't just stone him. They need the Romans to do it. So they need to frame him for treason.
Exactly. They need to get him on a political charge. So they come to him with what they think is the perfect trap.
Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?
It's a brilliant binary trap. If Jesus says, yes, pay the tax, the Jewish crowds who are listening, who hate the Roman occupation, will see him as a collaborator. He loses his messianic street cred instantly.
But if he says, no, don't pay the tax, the Herodians, who are basically Roman sympathizers, will have him arrested on the spot for sedition. It's checkmate.
Or so they think. But notice what Jesus does. He doesn't answer the question directly. He asks for a prop. He says, show me the coin for the tax.
The denarius.
Now, we need to look closely at this object. This isn't just a quarter. This is a potent piece of imperial propaganda. In the ancient world, coins were the primary way kings communicated their status to the masses. They were like billboards and Twitter feeds and Fox News all rolled into one.
What was actually on the coin?
On the front, the face of Tiberius Caesar, but more importantly, the inscription. The text on the coin read, Tai Caesar Divi Aug F Augustus, which translates to Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus.
Son of the divine.
And on the back, it often said Pontifex Maximus, which means high priest. So this little piece of silver was making a huge theological claim. It was claiming that Caesar was a god, or at least the son of a god, and the chief priest of humanity. It was divine titulature. Sound familiar?
It's the king of Babylon all over again. I will be like the Most High. Caesar is claiming the exact same thing. He is claiming to be in the god category.
Precisely. So when Jesus asks for the coin, he is bringing this blasphemous claim into the spotlight for everyone to see. He holds it up. And now the source walks us through a logic trap that is just. It's beautiful in its simplicity. It's a two-step category collapse.
Okay, walk us through it slowly. I want to get there.
Okay, step one. Hypothesis A. Let's assume Caesar is just a man. He is a political ruler, an emperor, but he's a human being. If he's just a man, can he legitimately own an object that marks him as God?
No. If he's just a man, the coin is a lie. It's idolatry. It's blasphemy. Men don't own God-marked things.
Correct. So if Caesar is a man, the coin is a fraud, and you shouldn't have it in the temple courts anyway. Now, hypothesis B. Let's assume the coin is telling the truth. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that Caesar is divine. He is a god.
Okay, if he is a god, then what?
Then do you pay taxes to him?
No. You don't pay taxes to a deity. You offer worship. You offer tithes or sacrifices. Taxation is a civil contract between humans. Worship is a religious covenant with a god. They are two different categories.
Exactly. So here's the collapse. The coin itself, the very object they hand him, disqualifies their question. It cannot function as a tax for a man because it claims he is divine, and it cannot function as tribute to a god within Jewish law because it's a graven image, an idol of a foreign deity.
The coin is a contradiction. Its own claims make it unusable for either purpose. It destroys itself.
It is a logical impossibility. It's an artifact of a collapsed category. So when Jesus says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's, he isn't just saying, pay your bills and go to church.
What is he saying then? It's deeper than that.
He is saying, take this thing, this lie, this piece of metal that claims a man is a god, and give it back to the man who thinks he's a god. Let the lie go back to its source. It belongs in his category of falsehood. But give what is truly real, your heart, your life, your worship, your very being, which is made in the image of God. Give that to God.
Whoa. Yeah.
He is forcing the claim to finish its own argument. He is saying, if Caesar wants to be a god, let him have his little metal idols, but I am not playing that game and neither should you. He exposes the lie just by holding it up to the light.
It's the same move as Isaiah 14.
It's the exact same move. That is the synthesis. In Isaiah, God lets the king of Babylon say, I am God, and then lets physical reality, death, crush him. In the Gospels, Jesus lets the coin say Caesar is God and lets cold, hard logic crush the question.
It's exposure through allowance. You don't have to fight the lie with a sword. You just have to give it enough rope to hang itself.
And notice the result in the text. It says, they marveled at him and left him and went away. Why? Because they realized their brilliant trap had snapped back on their own fingers. Jesus exposed that Caesar, like the king of Babylon, is claiming a slot he cannot hold.
Render to Caesar always just seemed like a clever dodge to me, like he's being slippery. But this makes it an ontological mic drop. He is dismantling the entire theological foundation of the Roman Empire with a single sentence.
It is the most subversive thing he could have possibly said. He denied Caesar's divinity without ever saying the words, "Caesar isn't God." He made the coin say it for him.
So bringing this all together, we have the king of Babylon, we have Caesar. Both are humans claiming to be like the Most High. Both are exposed as frauds, one by death, one by logic. The source argues this leads us to the deepest point, the redefinition of power itself.
This is the takeaway. This is the part that changes how we live, not just how we read an ancient text. Because if we strip away the Lucifer myth and we look at the human reality of these stories, we realize that we are all, in our own small ways, trying to be the king of Babylon.
How so? I mean, I'm not claiming to be a god.
Aren't we? What is the definition of power in our world? What is the definition of success?
It's ascent. It's going up, getting the promotion, getting the corner office, building the platform, getting the followers on social media, getting more money, more influence. We think safety is at the top.
I will ascend. I will set my throne on high. We believe that if we get high enough, we will be safe. We will be untouchable. We will be, in a functional sense, godlike. We will be in control.
We think divinity means immunity.
Yes. But the Bible, from cover to cover, presents a completely inverted definition of divinity. We see it in God descending to create. We see it in Jesus descending to save. The source synthesizes it into this final, powerful ontological distinction. Humans think being God means going up and staying up. But Scripture shows that being God means going all the way down and coming back with life.
That is the line. Say it again, going all the way down and coming back with life.
The king of Babylon wanted to be like the Most High, but the Most High descends into death and returns. The king was brought down and stayed down. Therefore, by simple, mathematical, observable logic, the king was never like the Most High. The claim is disproven by the descent itself.
It really exposes our own definitions of success, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We spend our whole lives trying to build these towers of safety and influence.
Yeah.
But if your tower falls and you can't get back up, you weren't powerful.
Yeah.
You were just high up. You were fragile.
And that is the path of fragility. Because if you have to stay up to be safe, you are terrified of falling. You are constantly defending your position. You are paranoid. You are crushing anyone who threatens your ascent. That is the psychology of the tyrant.
But if you are truly secure, if your identity is secure,
If you are truly in the image of God, the true God who descends, you can go low. You can serve. You can sacrifice. You can lose your reputation. You can even suffer and die. Because you know that descent is not the end. You know where the keys are.
that is powerful. It replaces the cosmic villain with a mirror. We aren't fighting some demon in the clouds. We are fighting that impulse in ourselves to grab power and hold on to it for dear life.
That is the mission of this deep dive, to move from a myth that entertains us to a text that interrogates us.
So as we wrap up this hour, let's just recap the journey. It's been a long one.
We started with the villain we think we know, Lucifer, the fallen angel.
And we found out he isn't in the text. The text is about a human king, a tyrant, acting like a fool.
We looked at the grammar. You is singular. Morningstar is a job title, not a name. A jersey, not a person.
We looked at the tone. God doesn't sneer. He asks a grief-filled question. How did this happen to you? How did you get here?
We looked at the physics. God goes down voluntarily, which is an act of love. The king is pushed down, which is the result of pride.
We looked at the geography. Sheol is in hell. It's the witness stand where the fraud is exposed by the other dead kings.
And finally, the coin. The little artifact that proves you can't be a man and a god at the same time. The trap that snaps back on the trapper.
It's a complete dismantling of the ascent narrative that runs our world. It really leaves you with nowhere to hide.
It leaves you with a choice. Which definition of power do you want to live by? The Babylon definition or the kingdom definition?
So for you listening, what is the final thought? What is the thing to chew on as you go about your week?
I keep coming back to the image the source leaves us with. The image of the empty throne versus the occupied grave.
Unpack that for us.
The king of Babylon tried to fill the throne of God. He tried to ascend and sit there. He ended up filling a grave. He is still there. His ambition led to a permanent occupied grave.
In Jesus.
Jesus went willingly to the grave. He occupied it for 3 days. And because he did, he now occupies the throne. The biblical narrative inverts our entire value system.
The one who grabbed for the throne ended up in the grave. The one who went willingly to the grave ended on the throne.
That is the gospel in a single sentence. And it's the warning of Isaiah 14. If you grab, you lose. If you give, you gain.
That's a lot to process, but in the best way possible. It makes you look at your own life, your own ambition, and ask, Am I trying to ascend, or am I willing to descend? Am I building a Babylon, or am I following the Christ?
It's the question that defines us. It's the only one that matters.
I think we have to leave it right there. Thank you for walking us through this. This was a heavy one, but man, it was good. I feel like I need to go read the whole book of Isaiah now with new eyes.
My pleasure. It's always worth reading what's actually there, even if it messes up our favorite stories. Especially then.
Absolutely. And to you, listening, thanks for taking the dive with us. Don't just take our word for it. Go read Isaiah 14. Read it without the Lucifer filter and see what you find. Look at the verbs, look at the pronouns, and ask yourself the hard question. We'll see you on the next deep dive.